Thank you for joining me. It's Friday night. I hope you are having a great start to your weekend. Hopefully your week's worth of entertainment and work, whatever might have been transpiring, has led you to this time to be able to relax and enjoy your weekend. And for those of you like me and my wife that probably still have quite a bit of work to do, the weekend just keeps rolling on. But tonight here in Vegas, we got F1 racing starting at 10 p.m. So wife and I will be heading down to see some very fast moving cars and hopefully not get hit in the head by flying manhole sewer covers like they had flying on the practice course last night. But anyway, we got to get to it. Kopacka standoff with Swat ending in loss of life. As you all know, I'm ARHayes. I'm a convict's thoughts. I talk from a experienced background of an ex-convict that's committed crimes and unfortunately experienced many of things that I wish upon nobody else. I've been in two standoffs, one with SWAT, one that ended prior to SWAT being called by the local police department, and the sheriff's department were able to end that one prior to SWAT arriving. However, I have been involved in one with SWAT as well. I'm trying to pick which one I want to talk to you about because they both were very instrumental in how I feel about what I've seen so far on the newly released body cam footage, which you can catch on a neighboring YouTube channel, Lana, with Truth and Transparency. Absolutely amazing. She has the footage, and I obviously am going to leave it completely up to her channel to showcase that for you. She does a great commentary throughout, so please, 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 if you didn't get to see it live, make sure you go catch that on a rerun. Give her a big thumbs up. Give her channel some love. She's absolutely amazing. I absolutely respect her work. Now, like I said, I've been in two standoffs. One that did not reach the level of SWAT. The second did reach the level of SWAT. The reason why mine actually reached the level of SWAT was because there were 5 of us. They deemed that we had a couple of hostages that we supposedly had taken. I guess I'll talk about that one. And it's a hard one for me to talk about because, you know what, ladies and gentlemen, it's never a good feeling to have to admit to your wrongs in life and talk about a past that so many would never understand and do not accept. As all of you know, I'm a convicted felon. I served many of years in the penitentiary, and now I'm on a new path in life with a beautiful wife to try and change my entire direction of life and what I want to accomplish in life. But I've still been through what I've been through, and I've still experienced what I've experienced. So I want to kind of share with you not only my experience, but my opinion of what we see based off my experience on the body cam footage of the Kopacka loss of life at the end result of a standoff with SWAT. We're talking about Pullman, Washington. Happened December of 2022. Many know of it because of the Idaho 4 case, which was transpiring, where even we see the body cam footage of Bryan Kohberger when he was pulled over in Indiana, actually even mentioned the Kopacka standoff and loss of life. Some have even maybe possibly thought Kopacka could have been involved in the Idaho 4 case, which I've had that swirling in my mind as well, and it's no disrespect to the man. He is a former military person of our country, deserves a lot of respect. Evidently, he, at the end of his life, was enduring some mental issues, some mental illness, probably some PTSD, and maybe some other factors going into that. And unfortunately, just based off the little I know and the little opinion I may have, it seems like it could have affected him in life to the point that it may have cost him his life. Watching the body cam footage of his situation is frustrating. And the reason why I can say it's frustrating is because I've been there both in an individual manner like he had to do, where you have to do it singly on your own and try to sort out your emotions and your feelings on the fly of how you want to react to the way people are yelling and screaming in your direction, handling the said taking into custody and defusing the situation. In a group setting, it's much different because not only are you dealing with your own personal emotions and feelings, but you're also interacting with others within your group that are stirring more emotion and more feelings to go combined in with a SWAT and a law enforcement presence that's outside of a door that's trying to convince you to think or feel differently. So actually, let's go back. Let's do the individual, because I think that ties in better anyway to the Brent Kopacka situation. When I was in the situation I was in, where I was in a standoff situation, I had gotten out of my car and ran from law enforcement trying to get away. I had warrants. I had not committed a new crime. I was not in the commission of an actual crime. I was running because I knew I had warrants for a crime. So no matter what, I was going to be going to jail. I guess I just wasn't ready to go to jail at that time. I was not a clear thinker. I was only in my late teens, already into a whirlwind of bad decision making and, into a life of crime. But anyway, I ran from my car. I felt as I had gotten away, and I ran into a business complex that had probably 15 to 20 businesses within it, a big courtyard in the center. It had fenced gates that closed the outer part of the actual complex. When nobody was there, they could lock those, keeping all the office doors on the inside of the courtyard, and everything on the outside was locked. I had just beaten in the time frame before closing, so by the time I had actually gotten in and hunkered down and hidden, those gates had actually become locked. There were no longer employees other than a few scattered here or there in various offices that obviously had keys to get in and outside, the gates of the outside courtyard. But they were inside of their office buildings, locked in, and I was hiding in an actual public bathroom in the courtyard area. I heard law enforcement show up into the parking lots. I knew they did not know where I was located, but I also knew I didn't want to stay in the bathroom because it was a very confined, small space with only one entrance, and I knew I was completely blocked. So I made my way out of the bathroom, and yes, I kicked in and scared the living heebie-jeebies out of a worker in an office building that had approximately 5 or 6 different offices with doors, and then a big, conference room and a kitchen. And I was able to barricade the door behind me, making it look as though it had closed and relocked. And prior to shutting that door, I knew it was instrumental that I got the actual hostage situation handled by getting that employee out of the building. So I didn't let her out in the front door that would be right in the courtyard where the law enforcement would then be completely given knowledge of where I was at. I instead let her out the back of the building and quickly locked the door and told her to run and get away. I felt like it was the best thing I could do. So in comparison, right off the bat, I kind of feel as though, knowing what transpired with Brent Kopacka, him being in an actual apartment with said roommates and me being in kind of an office setting with a said employee, I let her go, and I feel like the roommates were able to get away from Kopacka pretty quick, defusing a hostage situation. And this is kind of where I run into some issues that we'll discuss within the Kopacka situation compared to what I endured, and maybe why mine came to the conclusion it did compared to the way that Kopacka conclusion came. While I was hunkered down in the offices, obviously I did all I could to stay out of any sight, any view of windows to where anybody looking in would be able to see my location. Now, unfortunately for me, pretty much every office within the area I had confined myself to had windows, except for a couple of very small areas that I didn't want to get myself into. I really liked the idea of space. I didn't want to feel confined, even though those spaces may have allotted me a better hiding spot. I didn't want to take advantage of those because it was confined. Where when I also have watched the Kopacka situation, and I heard people rumbling, why didn't he just go in the bathroom? Because there's no window in the bathroom for anybody to visually see him, and no sniper able to take lock on him. He didn't probably do that because it would confine him to an area where law enforcement could literally box you into that little area and you have nowhere to go. Well, I wanted the same situation. I wanted somewhere to be able to go. So I did hunker down in one of the back door-locked offices of the area. It was a pretty good size office, and it also had a back sliding door to another little area, not so much to the street to get away, but it had its own little smoking area behind it that was fenced in, and then outside of that would be the getaway outside Main Street area. Had room, had sight of being able to see things around me, felt more confident in the fact I could hunker down and I could see everything and hear everything going around me, which was important to me, because the only way I knew I could get out of this situation was A, to be able to sneak away unseen, unheard, unseen, just get lucky because maybe they would focus on the other offices within the courtroom and I would be able to go out the back way. But another route that I felt like there was a possibility I was going to get out of this was to defuse the situation enough that the worst case scenario is we just worked it out to where I came out with my hands up and, you know, we worked it out from there. But I wanted first to take the opportunity to try to get away. I don't know what was going through Brent Kopacka's mind. It seems like it was far different than the idea of getting away. I don't believe that was his intention. I don't know if he was having a mental breakdown, an emotional breakdown, a chaotic breakdown, whether he had something in his mind that was truly really bothering him. And at times I thought about, could it be the fact that, you know, Kohberger left the area with his father and just kind of left him to hang out to dry and maybe possibly take the heat on the Idaho 4 homicides. It's something that has crossed my mind and I still swirl around every once in a while and think about it. And again, that's no disrespect to him. Military veteran, deserves utmost respect for that, but that doesn't mean people don't commit crimes. I mean, it's unfortunate. We've seen law enforcement, military personnel, political entities, all the way across the board, people fall into a realm of where they could possibly commit a crime. Kopacka's situation right off the bat was different than mine in the fact of how loud the people engaging him were. When it comes to a standoff, you don't want to egg it on more, because in most cases, law enforcement doesn't know who it is that they're really dealing with. They're doing their research on the fly. They're trying to learn as much as they can about the said person, but you don't truly know who and what said mind frame they're in. For me, I was young. I had getting away on my main agenda, and I was going to do almost anything to be able to do that, including at that point I had decided if I had to conduct some violence, not meaning gunfire or death, but fist fighting and wrestling and, scrambling to get myself out, I would. And I don't know what Kopacka's ultimate frame of mind was. It said that he had weapons. I heard in the body cam footage a lot about a gun and stuff of that nature. So, but the first thing I could tell you where it just didn't seem right to me was the vocal nature that law enforcement and SWAT took in regards to being at a very high tone level with him, not defusing the situation, but almost egging the situation on more. Where in my situation, when they did finally, and they did get me, they got me surrounded within that office that I'm telling you about, to the point even my backdoor exit was also blocked. I could not get out of the little situation I was in. It just wasn't going to happen. So now it became an engagement with the authorities in an attempt to defuse the situation. And can you get me to walk out of that door without anything transpiring in a violent or negative manner? Mine were talking to me. Not like you and I are talking to each other right here, because this is just a quieter, I'm in a room, got to keep my voice down type of conversation. But they were not vocally raising their voice, demanding me to put down said weapon, demanding me to come out with my hands up. That wasn't their intention. They were trying to defuse me first. Get me to feel more confident and comfortable that it was the right decision to make on my own to just walk out the door comfortably. In that Kopacka situation, it almost seemed as though it was like we're all on high alert, including Kopacka, and now SWAT is on that high alert as well. So no matter what the movement's going to transpire here, and this is opinion, and it's based my opinion, somebody was going to have to fire at this point. Why do I say that? Because nothing was defused. They never talked to him about, think about what your family would think right now. Take a deep breath. Let's save your mom the heartache. You know your mother doesn't want to lose her son. These are things that were being said to me. Think about this. You've got a little brother. Is this how you would want him to remember you and maybe build upon his life and his way of doing things in life? You don't want him to visualize what you're doing right now as the proper way to do this. And that touched home to me. Even though I had already distanced myself in many ways from so many in my life to enable myself to live the lifestyle I was, I still cared about people in my life. I still cared about my family. I still loved my mother. I still loved my brother. I still loved my stepfather. These were tools to help disengage my heightened level of chaos to try to get out of this situation. Kopacka wasn't given any of that. Now, if it were me on the law enforcement side, even outside of utilizing the love of friends, family, that nature, I would have utilized the fact we highly respect you for your service. We honor you for your military dedication to this country. You can defuse things by giving pride and joy to something that that person probably has great pride in. They had worked hard for that. They had dedicated themselves to being a military personnel and being successful within that. It doesn't matter if they're discharged, none of that matters. They still, at one point, in their mind, in their heart and soul, had a dedicated feeling of pride within what they were doing, and it was military based. They didn't utilize that. They didn't give him honor. They didn't give him pride. They didn't use what meant something to him to defuse him. Instead, they placed him under arrest. I've never seen that tactic before. I've never heard of that tactic before. I've just beyond my own self and what I've been through, I've sat in cells and on yards and in chow halls talking with people, and we all just had great conversations, because it is actually very interesting to hear about people, how they got taken down in SWAT situations. I mean, shoot, when someone comes on the yard and, you know, they tell you, yeah, I got busted. I was in one of the biggest SWAT situations the state of Louisiana's ever seen, blah, blah. That's interesting. It piques your interest. You start discussing that, and they kind of laugh with you, and they tell you where their mistakes are and what utilized, you know, the benefit that the law enforcement and SWAT took advantage of to get them to come out, or whatever might have happened. And I've been in one where people lost lives, and, you know, it sucks. It really does. But I still have the knowledge of what I learned from that one as well. My opinion in watching the body cam of the Brent Kopacka situation is they had made the predetermination he wasn't coming out. That's opinion, ladies and gentlemen. It's opinion, so don't rough me up on that. I know situations go wrong, and I know certain intentions sometimes change, but it never seemed as though, in my point of view, watching that, there was any thought that that was going to end any differently than it did. It did not look as though anybody was actually thinking that was going to end with him coming out peacefully. Why would Brent Kopacka come out with his hands up knowing that he was going to be arrested? Why? This standoff didn't happen. The main reasoning for the standoff was not trying to evade capture. He wasn't trying to not get arrested. There was a purpose behind this standoff. There was a purpose behind his anger. When did they go to try to find that purpose? Why didn't we figure that purpose out? Why didn't we get his family on the phone and throw the phone into the room for him to talk to his mother? It doesn't matter at that point. At least you made the attempt. If you get that phone with his mother on it into the room, on the floor peacefully, and he makes the decision to ignore it or shut it off, that's his decision. But you never gave him that choice. Why not? Isn't that a part of defusing the situation? Aren't we supposed to, as a society, as a whole, not even just including felons like myself or criminals or everyday people that live life correctly, or even law enforcement, SWAT, FBI, all the way up the ranks, aren't we supposed to handle things in the most peaceful, unviolent way we possibly can? Isn't that the goal? No loss of life. Isn't that what we strive for? When we see all these mass shootings in the schools, are we not trying to implement many of new regulations to stop the violence, to heed that off in a different direction so we can protect people? Well, at that point in time, Kopacka, who was he a danger to? The apartment complex was empty. There were no roommates in the apartment. The only two entities in the apartment during the standoff is him and law enforcement. If it's that big of a risk, why doesn't law enforcement just take a couple of steps backwards, allowing him some space, maybe even let him fall asleep? Maybe let him get comfortable enough he calms down, becomes tired, and wants a nap. Or maybe he's just hungry and wants something to eat. Cater to him, give him a sandwich. And this is where a lot of people will come at me and say, well, we don't treat criminals that way. I don't think he was a criminal at that point. I think he was a man mentally in chaotic state, in a bad position. He didn't know what to do. He really did not know what to do. He had so many emotions pulling him in so many different ways. He did not know what to do. And nobody gave him the help or the space to try to figure that out. Again, my opinion, I wasn't there. I can only go based upon what I can see and hear. In my situation, they gave me that space. Even though they had me surrounded, and I knew they had me surrounded. I knew that the minute that they locked in, I knew that. They calmly talked to me for hours. Hours. Talked to me about my family. Talked to me about my girlfriend. Talked to me about the type of car I drove. Talked to me about my schooling. What were my future dreams? Well, if I did go in on my warrants, what were my aspirations after I got out? Giving me hope that even if they did arrest me right now, I was still coming home. They had a whole mythology to the way they did it, and never one time did my mind sway in the fact I was going to lose my life potentially in this situation. My decision was I going to go serve years upon years in the penitentiary and have the ability to come home? Or was I going to find a way to weasel out and get out of this situation and stay on the run for as long as I possibly could? That's where my mindset was trying to figure out a decision. This man, Brent Kopacka, I don't know if he was ever literally thinking escape. But I also don't ever think he was given the opportunity to think of coming home. It's just my opinion. At 3:40, a shot was fired through the window, missing Kopacka altogether. Never once in my scenario was a shot ever fired. They didn't even fire in tear gas. No, they fired in one of the old school block cell phones and told me to call my mother. And if I didn't get a hold of my mother, to call my dad, call my brother, call anybody I wanted to talk to. They were going to give me the time to have a conversation. Well, I didn't want to call anybody, so I didn't make that call. So they continued to talk to me, defusing the situation. They didn't make it seem like all their guns were drawn on me. I knew a few were. They have to be in that situation, but I didn't feel like every gun from all opposite ends of the world were posted on me. No shot ever came through the window at me. At 3:40, a shot's fired through the window, missing Kopacka, which pushes him to a whole nother level. Whole nother level. What do you think the chaos is now? On top of everything going on, you're telling him you're arresting him. You're telling him to come out with his hands up. You're telling him to put down the gun. You're yelling at him. You're forcibly just inches away from the door. And then you want to fire a shot through the window and actually miss. Well, now, at that point, no matter what happens from that point moving forward, it's said and done. It's violence at that set point. If he has weapons, he's firing. You fired at him. He's straight out of the military. You fired on him. What do you think he's going to do? You're not going to defuse it at that point, so there's no point in doing that, and they didn't. At 4 a.m., they fired the fatal shot. The man lost his life. Whatever he had going on in his life, or maybe if he was or wasn't involved in some sort of criminal activities, will never be known, and it will never even matter at this point, because all that matters at this point is you got to back up the reels here, and you got to focus in on the fact, why are we all just looking at this scenario thinking about the loss of Kopacka and how he could be involved in it? Why aren't we saying, LE and SWAT, what the hell did you accomplish? What did you do? And then they do this big full report and do all this stuff about them investigation. What do any of us know about it? Nothing. They just have closed it and said it's good to go. It's not good to go, ladies and gentlemen. It's not good to go. We need to know, why was it handled the way it was? Why were you verbally yelling at the man from the beginning? You did nothing to defuse it. You did not follow the simple ways of defusing this type of stuff. Why? Why wouldn't someone from local law enforcement, who most likely knew of him, if not of him, at least make the attempt to take the lead instead of SWAT? Mine ended pretty peacefully, and I'll tell you why. They gave me the respect to allow it to end peacefully. Could I have tried to have ended it in a different way? I could have. I could have. I didn't try to escape at the end of the day because I didn't find a way to get out of the area I was in without just getting slammed to the ground the minute I came out of that room. But I did have firearms in the room with me. It could have ended a far different way. But a thought never transpired that it was needed to end that different way. And that's because of the way law enforcement who approached the scene allowed me the respect to work the situation out of that high-risk criminal mentality, end-of-life way, back to a normal, let's think about this and let's just handle this. I have a future. I can come out of this room and we'll move on from this. I might have to go do some prison time, but I'm still going to come home. It's not the end of the world. Kopacka knew it was the end of the world. He knew it was over. From the first minute SWAT began yelling at him, to the point they put him under arrest, to the point they continued to yell at him, then fired upon him, never allowing him any space to breathe. They had a box the whole time. For what? Where was he going to go? Where was he going to go? If you left him in that apartment for the next 3 days, where was he going to go? And what would be the worst case scenario if you left him in that apartment for 3 days? He might have lost his own life, right? He might have maybe taken his own. Well, you ended up taking it for him. You didn't give him any chance. Not all law enforcement is bad or corrupt, everybody. I've had great interaction with many, and let me tell you, the time of this instant that I'm talking about in my standoff, they handled it as well as you could possibly handle something, and they allowed me to walk out safe and sound and be able to be sitting here today talking to you with a new desire to do well in life. People can change their lives. Kopacka could have possibly got mental health. He could have possibly got on some medications. He could have got his life in order and back on track to take great pride in the many things he had worked so hard to accomplish. I was awarded that right. I was given that, and I'm thankful for that. At the end of the day, he was not. He was not. And whose shoulders does that fall on? Who should have to take the responsibility for that? Instead of hiding behind the reports and the investigations and the closed documents and nobody even knows, who's going to take responsibility on making the call on how that one went down? The area of Washington and Moscow, Idaho, Pullman and Washington, Idaho, or Washington, Pullman, Washington, Moscow, Idaho, and other areas surrounding are not looking so good within the training and capabilities of law enforcement at the time. It's a simple statement. It's not rude. It's not looking down upon anybody. It's just saying the training is just coming up short, and things are happening because of it. Idaho 4, quadruple loss of life. Others, loss of life through the means of taking their own life. Accidental deaths is what they call it. And now we look over at the Washington area, and we even have more with a high-profile SWAT team shooting in Kopacka. It's pretty scary, isn't it? So anybody, if you want to watch the footage, please venture over to Truth and Transparency. Lana does a great job, has the body cam footage fully up, new and live on her channel. I'm ARHayes. I appreciate you joining me. Tough discussion, but it's one that had to be had. Have a great night.